Welcome to Sinister States.
I always thought the worst thing that could happen to me was losing someone I loved. I was wrong. The worst thing is losing them and never knowing why, never having answers, only questions that gnaw at you in the dark, questions that keep you awake at night, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment, every word, every text, wondering what you missed. That's what happened to me when my best friend, Tyler, disappeared. And the last thing he ever sent me was a text message that made no sense. At least, not at first. It started on a Thursday, the kind of day that feels like it's holding its breath. The sky was overcast, the air heavy, and the world seemed to move a little slower. I was sitting in my car in the school parking lot, scrolling through my phone, waiting for Tyler to show up. He was always late, always running from one thing to the next, but he always showed up. That morning, though, he was later than usual. I texted him, "You alive?" No response. I tried to call, but it went straight to voicemail. I figured he'd overslept, or maybe his phone had died. It wasn't like him to ghost me, but I wasn't worried. Not yet. The first sign that something was off came during first period. Tyler's seat was empty. I kept glancing at the door, expecting him to burst in, out of breath, with some half-baked excuse. But he never did. By lunch, I was starting to get annoyed. I sent him another text. "Dude, where are you? You're missing pizza day." Still nothing. I asked around, but no one had seen him. His girlfriend, Emily, said he hadn't answered her calls either. That was weird. Tyler was glued to his phone, always texting, always online. For him to go dark like this, it wasn't just weird. It was wrong. After school, I drove by his house. His car was in the driveway, but the lights were off. I knocked on the door, but no one answered. I tried calling his mom, but she didn't pick up. I told myself he was probably just sick, maybe sleeping it off. But a knot of worry was starting to form in my stomach, tight and cold. That night, I lay in bed, staring at my phone, willing it to buzz, to light up with a message from Tyler. At 2:13 a.m., it finally did. It was a single text, just 3 words, "Don't trust them." I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. I texted back immediately, "Who? Tyler, what's going on?" No response. I called him, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried again and again, but nothing. The message sat there, glowing in the darkness, a warning, a plea, or maybe something else. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I went to the police. I showed them the text, told them everything I knew. They took down my statement, asked a few questions, and promised to look into it. But I could tell they didn't take it seriously. "Teenagers go missing all the time," they said. "He'll turn up. He probably just needed some space." But I knew Tyler. He wouldn't just disappear. Not without telling me. Not without a reason. Days passed. The police searched his house, his car, his phone records. They found nothing. No signs of struggle, no evidence of foul play. His phone was missing, but his wallet and keys were still in his room. His computer was wiped clean, all his social media accounts deleted. It was like he'd vanished into thin air. The town started to talk. Rumors spread. Tyler had run away. Tyler was in trouble. Tyler had gotten mixed up with the wrong people. But none of it made sense. Tyler wasn't like that. He was smart, careful, always looking out for everyone else. He wouldn't just leave. I started to dig on my own. I went through his things, talked to his friends, retraced his steps. I found nothing. No clues, no answers. Just that text, burning in my mind. Don't trust them. I started to wonder if I was losing it. Maybe Tyler had just snapped. Maybe he'd left on his own. But then strange things started happening. I'd come home to find my room had been searched, my things moved around. I'd get calls from blocked numbers, heavy breathing on the other end. I'd see cars parked outside my house, engines running, headlights off. I started to feel like I was being watched. One night, I woke up to find my window open, the curtains blowing in the wind. On my desk was a note, written in Tyler's handwriting. "They're not who they say they are." I took the note to the police, but they just shrugged. "Probably a prank," they said. "Kids messing around." But I knew it was real. I knew Tyler was trying to warn me. I started to look at everyone differently. My teachers, my neighbors, even my own family. Who were they? Who couldn't I trust? I started to keep a journal, writing down everything that happened, every strange encounter, every odd detail. I started to see patterns, people who seemed to know too much, who asked too many questions, who watched me just a little too closely. One day, I got a call from Emily. She was crying, her voice shaking. She said she'd gotten a text from Tyler, too. It was just a string of numbers, no explanation. I wrote them down. 42.3601 minus 71.0589. Coordinates. I plugged them into Google Maps. They pointed to an abandoned warehouse on the edge of town. That night, Emily and I drove out there. The warehouse was dark, the windows boarded up, the doors chained shut. We walked around the perimeter, looking for a way in. We found a broken window in the back, just big enough to squeeze through. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the smell of old oil. Our footsteps echoed on the concrete floor. We found a staircase leading down to the basement. At the bottom, we found a room filled with old computers, monitors flickering with static. On one of the screens was a message, "You're getting closer." Emily grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. We heard footsteps above us, heavy and deliberate. We ducked behind a stack of crates, holding our breath. The footsteps came closer, then stopped. We waited, hearts pounding, until the footsteps retreated. We left the warehouse, running through the darkness, not stopping until we reached the car. We didn't speak on the drive home. We didn't have to. We both knew we were in over our heads. The next day, Emily was gone. Her parents said she'd left in the middle of the night, left a note saying she needed to get away. But I knew better. I knew she'd been taken, just like Tyler. I went back to the warehouse, but it was empty. The computers were gone, the room stripped bare. There was no sign anyone had ever been there. I started to get more texts, always from unknown numbers, always cryptic. "Trust no one. They're watching. It's not safe." I started to feel like I was losing my mind. I went to the police again, but they just looked at me with pity. They said I was grieving, that I needed help. They said there was no evidence of foul play, no reason to believe Tyler or Emily were in danger. But I knew the truth. I knew something was happening, something no one wanted to talk about. I started to see things, shadows moving in the corners of my eyes, faces in the windows, figures following me down the street. I started to hear voices, whispers in the dark, calling my name. I stopped sleeping, stopped eating. I became obsessed with finding answers. One night, I got a text from Tyler's number. It was a video. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the play button. I took a deep breath and pressed it. The video was shaky, the camera moving fast. Tyler's face filled the screen, his eyes wide with fear. He was in a dark room, the walls covered in strange symbols. He whispered, "If you're seeing this, it's already too late. They're everywhere. They're not human. Don't trust anyone. Don't." I sat there, shaking, the phone slipping from my hand. I tried to call the number, but it was disconnected. I tried to trace the video, but it was gone, deleted from my phone, from the cloud, from everywhere. I went to the police one last time, showed them the video. They watched it, their faces blank. When it was over, they told me to go home, to get some rest. They said they'd look into it, but I could tell they didn't believe me. That night, I packed a bag and left town. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I just drove, mile after mile, until the sun came up. I found a cheap motel, paid in cash, and locked the door behind me. I sat on the bed, staring at my phone, waiting for another message, another clue. But nothing came. Just silence. I don't know what happened to Tyler. I don't know what happened to Emily. All I know is that they're gone. and I'm alone, and the questions keep piling up. Sometimes, late at night, I think I see Tyler's face in the shadows, hear his voice in the wind. Sometimes I wonder if I'm next, but I keep moving, keep searching, keep hoping for answers. Because that's all I have left. I wish I could say that leaving town made things better, that putting distance between myself and everything I'd ever known would somehow bring me peace. But the truth is, the further I drove, the more the questions followed me. They clung to me like a second skin, whispering in my ear, reminding me of everything I'd lost. I tried to convince myself that I was doing the right thing, that I was safer on the road, but every empty highway and every unfamiliar motel room just made me feel more exposed. The first few days were a blur. I drove until my eyes burned, stopping only for gas and coffee, barely speaking to anyone. I kept my phone off most of the time, afraid of what I might see if I turned it on. But the silence was worse. It was like the world had shrunk to the size of my car, the only sound the hum of the engine and the thud of my own heartbeat. On the third night, I found myself in a small town somewhere in upstate New York. The kind of place where the streets roll up at sundown and the only open business is a 24-hour diner. I sat in a corner booth, nursing a cup of coffee, staring at the rain streaking down the window. The waitress, a woman in her 50s with tired eyes and a kind smile, asked if I was okay. I lied and said I was just passing through, that I wanted to believe that I could start over, that I could outrun whatever had happened to Tyler and Emily. But as I sat there, I felt the weight of their absence pressing down on me. I kept replaying Tyler's last text in my mind, trying to make sense of it. Don't trust them. Who was he talking about? The police? Our friends? Strangers? Or was it something else entirely? I pulled out my journal and started to write, trying to piece together everything that had happened. I wrote down every detail I could remember, the texts, the video, the warehouse, the strange feeling that someone was always watching. I wrote until my hand cramped, until the words blurred on the page. That's when I noticed the man sitting at the counter. He was watching me, his eyes dark and unblinking. He looked out of place, his suit too crisp, his hair too perfect. He didn't touch his food, just sat there, staring. I tried to ignore him, but every time I glanced up, he was still watching. That I paid my bill and left, my skin crawling. As I walked to my car, I glanced over my shoulder. The man was standing in the doorway, still watching. I got in my car and locked the doors, my hands shaking. I started the engine and pulled out of the parking lot, my headlights cutting through the rain. That I drove for hours, not caring where I was going, just needing to put as much distance as possible between me and that diner. But no matter how far I went, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being followed. At sunrise, I pulled into a rest stop and tried to sleep. I dreamed of Tyler, of the warehouse, of the man in the diner. I woke up gasping, my heart racing. My phone was buzzing. I picked it up, my hands trembling. That it was another text, this time from an unknown number. You can't run forever. I stared at the screen, my mind racing. Was it a threat? A warning? Or just another cruel joke? I tried to call the number, but it was disconnected. I threw the phone across the car, my frustration boiling over. I knew I couldn't keep running. I needed answers. I needed to know what had happened to Tyler and Emily. I needed to know who was sending these messages, and why I decided to go back to the beginning. I drove back to my hometown, my stomach in knots. The streets looked the same, but everything felt different. The houses seemed smaller, the trees more twisted. I parked a few blocks from my house and walked the rest of the way, keeping to the shadows. My house was dark, the windows shuttered. I crept around to the back and let myself in through the basement door. The air was thick with dust and the smell of old memories. I made my way upstairs, my footsteps muffled by the carpet. My parents were gone, probably at work. I went to my room and locked the door behind me. I sat on the bed, staring at the walls, trying to remember every detail of the days before Tyler disappeared. I pulled out my journal and started to write, trying to make sense of it all. That's when I heard it, a faint tapping at the window. I froze, my heart pounding. I crept over and peeked through the blinds. It was Emily. She looked different, pale, her eyes sunken, her hair tangled. She was wearing the same clothes she'd been wearing the night we went to the warehouse. She looked up at me, her eyes pleading that I open the window and helped her inside. She collapsed onto the floor, shaking. "Emily," I whispered, "where have you been?" She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. "They took me," she whispered. "They took me and I couldn't get away." I knelt beside her, my hands shaking. "Who? Who took you?" She shook her head. "I don't know. They wore masks. They kept me in a room, no windows, just a bed and a camera. They asked me questions over and over. About Tyler, about you, about the texts. I told them I didn't know anything, but they didn't believe me." I hugged her, relief and fear warring inside me. "How did you get away?" She shuddered. "I don't know. I woke up and the door was open. I just ran. I didn't look back." I helped her to her feet and got her some water. She drank it greedily, her hands shaking. "We have to go to the police," I said. She shook her head violently. "No, we can't trust them. They're part of it." I stared at her, my mind reeling. "Part of what?" She looked at me, her eyes haunted. "I don't know, but they're watching us. All of them. The police, the teachers, the neighbors. They're all in on it." I wanted to tell her she was being paranoid, that she was just traumatized. But deep down, I knew she was right. I'd seen the way the police had dismissed me, the way people had started to look at me differently. I'd felt the eyes on me, the sense of being watched. "We have to find Tyler," I said. She nodded. "He's still out there." "I know it." We spent the next few days hiding out in my room, only leaving at night to get food. We kept the curtains closed, the lights off. We spoke in whispers, afraid of being overheard. We tried to piece together everything we knew, every clue, every detail. That's when we remembered the numbers, the coordinates Tyler had sent. We'd gone to the warehouse, but maybe there was something we'd missed. We decided to go back, this time during the day. We parked a few blocks away and walked the rest of the way, keeping to the shadows. The warehouse looked abandoned, but as we got closer, we saw a light flickering in one of the windows that we crept around to the back and found the same broken window. We climbed inside, our hearts pounding. The basement was empty, the computer's gone. But as we searched the room, Emily found something wedged behind a loose brick, a flash drive. We took it back to my house and plugged it into my laptop. The drive was encrypted, but Tyler had always used the same password for everything, his dog's name, Max. I typed it in, and the files opened. There were dozens of videos, all time-stamped, all filmed in the same dark room. The first few showed Tyler, his face bruised, his eyes wild. He spoke in whispers, begging for help, pleading for someone to find him. The later videos were different. They showed other people, people we recognized. Our friends, our teachers, even some of the police officers. They all sat in the same chair, all asked the same questions. "Who have you told? What do you know? Who else is involved?" Some of them cried, some screamed, some just stared blankly at the camera. But they all ended the same way, with a shadowy figure stepping into the frame, the screen going black. Emily and I sat in silence, the weight of what we'd seen pressing down on us. "We have to show someone," I said. She shook her head. "Who? We can't trust anyone." I knew she was right, but we couldn't just do nothing. That night, we made copies of the videos and hid them in different places, my house, Emily's house, even buried one in the woods behind the school. We wrote letters, explaining everything, and mailed them to people we trusted, our parents, our friends, even a few journalists that we waited, hoping someone would believe us, hoping someone would help, but nothing happened. The letters disappeared, the videos were erased, The people we trusted stopped answering our calls. It was like the world was closing in on us, one door at a time. Emily started to change. She became withdrawn, jumpy, afraid to be alone. She said she heard voices at night, saw shadows moving in the corners of her room. She said Tyler was trying to reach her, trying to warn her. I tried to help her, tried to keep her safe, but I was struggling too. I was having nightmares, waking up in cold sweats, convinced someone was in the room with me. I started to see the man from the diner everywhere, in the grocery store, at the gas station, even outside my house. One night, I woke up to find Emily standing over me, her eyes wide and unblinking. "They're here," she whispered. "They're coming." Before I could react, the door burst open and men in black masks stormed in. They grabbed us, dragged us out of the house, threw us into the back of a van. I fought, screamed, but it was no use. They took us to a building on the edge of town, blindfolded us, tied us to chairs. They asked us questions, the same questions from the videos. Who had we told? Where were the videos? Who else was involved? I lied, told them I didn't know anything. Emily did the same. They didn't believe us. They kept us there for days, maybe weeks. It was hard to tell. The days blurred together, the only light the harsh glare of the overhead bulbs. They fed us just enough to keep us alive, let us sleep just enough to keep us sane. One night, I woke up to find my restraints gone, the door to my cell open. I stumbled out into the hallway, calling for Emily. I found her in the next room, her face bruised, her eyes hollow. We made our way through the building, searching for a way out. We found a staircase leading up to the roof. We climbed it, our legs shaking, our hearts pounding. On the roof, we found Tyler. He was standing at the edge, his back to us. He turned when he heard us, his face pale, his eyes haunted. "You shouldn't have come," he said. "Tyler," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "We've been looking for you." He shook his head. "It's too late. They're everywhere. There's no escape." Before we could stop him, he stepped off the edge. We ran to the edge, looked down, but there was no sign of him. Just darkness. We stood there, holding each other, the wind whipping around us, the world spinning out of control. We didn't speak for a long time. The city below us was silent, the only sound the distant wail of a siren, echoing through the empty streets. I kept staring into the darkness, hoping to see some sign of Tyler, some proof that he was still alive. But there was nothing, just the cold wind and the endless night. Emily was shaking. I wrapped my arms around her, trying to steady her, but I could feel my own hands trembling. I wanted to believe that we could still get out, that we could still find answers, but the world felt smaller now, more dangerous. Every shadow seemed to hide a threat, every sound a warning. We made our way back down the stairs, moving as quietly as we could. The building was empty, the halls echoing with our footsteps. We found an exit at the back, a rusted metal door that led into an alley. We slipped out into the night, keeping to the shadows, our hearts pounding in our chests that we didn't go home. We couldn't. We knew they'd be watching, waiting for us to make a mistake. Instead, we wandered the city, ducking into abandoned buildings, hiding in the dark. We slept in shifts, one of us always awake, always listening. We ate whatever we could find, vending machine snacks, half-eaten sandwiches left on park benches. We were always hungry, always tired, always afraid. Days passed. The city seemed to close in around us, the streets growing emptier, the people more distant. We saw the man in the suit again, standing on a street corner, watching us with those cold, unblinking eyes. We saw others, too, men and women in dark clothes, always just out of reach, always watching. We tried to stay invisible, but it was impossible. We were too tired, too desperate. One night, we broke into a convenience store, hoping to find food. The alarm went off as soon as we stepped inside. We grabbed what we could and ran, but it was too late. The police were waiting for us outside, their faces blank, their eyes cold. They took us to the station, put us in separate rooms. They asked us questions, the same questions as before. Who had we told? Where were the videos? Who else was involved? I lied, told them I didn't know anything. They didn't believe me. They let us go after a few hours, but I knew it was just a warning. They wanted us to know they were watching, that they could get to us whenever they wanted. That we found each other outside the station, clinging to each other like survivors of a shipwreck. We knew we couldn't stay in the city any longer. We needed to get out, to disappear. That we pooled what little money we had and bought bus tickets to a town 100 miles away. We rode in silence, staring out the window, watching the city fade into the distance. I kept expecting to see the man in the suit, to feel his eyes on me, but the bus was empty, the road dark and lonely. The new town was small, quiet, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone else. We rented a room in a cheap motel, paid in cash, used fake names. We tried to blend in, to become invisible, but it was hard. We were always looking over our shoulders, always waiting for the next text, the next warning. Emily started to unravel. She barely slept, barely ate. She spent hours staring at the wall, her eyes hollow. She said she could hear Tyler's voice, whispering to her in the dark. She said he was trying to tell her something, but she couldn't understand. I tried to help her, tried to keep her grounded, but I was struggling, too. I was having nightmares, waking up in the middle of the night, convinced someone was in the room with us. I started to see things, shadows moving in the corners, faces in the windows, figures following us down the street. One night, I woke up to find Emily gone. I searched the motel, the streets, the parks, but she was nowhere to be found. I called her phone, but it was turned off. I went back to the room, hoping she'd come back, but she never did. I was alone again. I spent the next few days searching for her, putting up flyers, asking around. No one had seen her. The police weren't interested. Another runaway, they said. She'll turn up. But I knew better. I knew she'd been taken, just like Tyler. That I started to get more texts, always from unknown numbers, always cryptic. You're next. It's not over. We're watching. I tried to trace the numbers, but they were always disconnected, always untraceable. I started to keep a low profile, moving from motel to motel, never staying in one place for too long. I paid in cash, used fake names, avoided cameras. But no matter how careful I was, I always felt like I was being watched. One night, I got a call from a blocked number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. It was Tyler. His voice was weak, barely more than a whisper. You have to listen to me, he said. They're not what they seem. They're everywhere. You can't trust anyone. Tyler, where are you? I asked, my voice shaking. I can't say. They're listening. They're always listening. Who are they? What do they want? He was silent for a long time. Then, they want you. They want all of us. Don't let them find you. Don't. The line went dead. I sat there, staring at the phone, my heart pounding. I tried to call back, but the number was blocked. I tried to trace the call, but it was impossible. I knew I had to get out. I packed my things and left the motel, driving through the night, not caring where I was going, just needing to keep moving. I ended up in another small town, another cheap motel. I tried to lay low, tried to stay invisible, but the texts kept coming, the calls, the feeling of being watched. I started to notice things, people who seemed out of place, cars that followed me for miles, faces that appeared in the crowd and then disappeared. I started to wonder if I was losing my mind. One night, I woke up to find someone standing at the foot of my bed. It was the man in the suit, his eyes cold and empty. You can't run forever, he said. I tried to move, tried to scream, but I couldn't. I was frozen, paralyzed. He leaned in close, his breath cold on my face. We know what you've done. We know what you've seen. You can't hide from us. He straightened up, his face expressionless. You have a choice. You can keep running, keep hiding, or you can come with us. We can give you answers. We can make it all go away. I tried to speak, but my mouth wouldn't work. He smiled, a cold, empty smile. Think about it. He turned and walked out of the room, the door closing softly behind him. I lay there, shaking, unable to move, unable to breathe. When I finally managed to get up, the room was empty. The door was locked, the windows closed. There was no sign anyone had been there. I packed my things and left, not caring where I was going, just needing to get away. I drove for hours, the road stretching out in front of me, endless and empty. I kept expecting to see the man in the suit, to feel his eyes on me, but the road was empty, the night silent. I stopped at a rest area, trying to catch my breath, trying to calm down. I sat in the car, staring at the dashboard, my hands shaking. That's when I saw it, a note, tucked under the windshield wiper. I got out and grabbed it, my heart pounding. It was written in Tyler's handwriting. It's not over. They're still watching. Don't trust anyone. I sat back in the car, the note clutched in my hand, my mind racing. I knew I couldn't keep running. I needed answers. I needed to know what had happened to Tyler and Emily. I needed to know who was behind all of this. I decided to go back to the warehouse, to the place where it had all started. I drove through the night, the road empty, the world silent. I kept expecting to see the man in the suit, to feel his eyes on me, but the road was empty, the night silent. When I got to the warehouse, it was different. The windows were boarded up, the doors chained shut. But I found a way in, a broken window in the back. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the smell of old oil. I made my way to the basement, my footsteps echoing on the concrete floor. The room was empty, the computers gone. But as I searched the room, I found something wedged behind a loose brick, a flash drive. I took it back to my car and plugged it into my laptop. The drive was encrypted, but I remembered Tyler's password. I typed it in, and the files opened. There were dozens of videos, all time-stamped, all filmed in the same dark room. The first few showed Tyler, his face bruised, his eyes wild. He spoke in whispers, begging for help, pleading for someone to find him. The later videos were different. They showed other people, people I recognized. My friends, my teachers, even some of the police officers. They all sat in the same chair, all asked the same questions. Who have you told? What do you know? Who else is involved? Some of them cried, some screamed, some just stared blankly at the camera. But they all ended the same way, with a shadowy figure stepping into the frame, the screen going black. I sat in the car, the weight of what I'd seen pressing down on me. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't just run anymore. I made copies of the videos and hid them in different places. My car, my motel room, even buried one in the woods behind the warehouse. I wrote letters, explaining everything, and mailed them to people I trusted, my parents, my friends, even a few journalists. I waited, hoping someone would believe me, hoping someone would help. But nothing happened. The letters disappeared, the videos were erased, the people I trusted stopped answering my calls. It was like the world was closing in on me, one door at a time. I started to unravel. I barely slept, barely ate. I spent hours staring at the wall, my eyes hollow. I said I could hear Tyler's voice, whispering to me in the dark. I said he was trying to tell me something, but I couldn't understand. I tried to keep myself grounded, but I was struggling. I was having nightmares, waking up in the middle of the night, convinced someone was in the room with me. I started to see the man from the diner everywhere, in the grocery store, at the gas station, even outside my motel point. One night, I woke up to find someone standing at the foot of my bed. It was the man in the suit, his eyes cold and empty. "You can't run forever," he said. I tried to move, tried to scream, but I couldn't. I was frozen, paralyzed. He leaned in close, his breath cold on my face. "We know what you've done. We know what you've seen. You can't hide from us." He straightened up, his face expressionless. "You have a choice. You can keep running, keep hiding, or you can come with us. We can give you answers. We can make it all go away." I tried to speak, but my mouth wouldn't work. He smiled, a cold, empty smile. "Think about it." He turned and walked out of the room, the door closing softly behind him. I lay there, shaking, unable to move, unable to breathe. When I finally managed to get up, the room was empty. The door was locked, the windows closed. There was no sign anyone had been there. I packed my things and left, not caring where I was going, just needing to get away. I drove until the sun came up, the sky bleeding from black to gray to a pale, sickly blue. I didn't know where I was going anymore. The world outside the windshield felt unreal, like a movie I'd seen 100 times but couldn't remember the ending. I kept glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see headlights, a black sedan, or the man in the suit. But the road behind me was always empty, just a ribbon of cracked asphalt stretching into the past. I stopped at a gas station on the edge of a nowhere town, the kind of place where the only sign of life was the flicker of a neon open sign and the bored teenager behind the counter. I filled up the tank, bought a stale sandwich and a bottle of water, and sat in the car, engine idling, trying to decide what to do next. My phone buzzed. I jumped, nearly dropping it. The screen was blank, no number, no contact, just a single message. "You're getting close." I stared at the words, my mind racing. Close to what? Close to the truth? Close to the end? I wanted to throw the phone out the window, to smash it under my heel, but I couldn't. It was the only connection I had left, the only thread tying me to Tyler, to Emily, to whatever was really happening. I opened my journal and started to write, trying to make sense of it all. I wrote down every detail I could remember, the texts, the videos, the man in the suit, the feeling of being watched. I tried to find a pattern, a clue, something I'd missed. But the more I wrote, the more tangled it all became, a web of fear and confusion with no way out. I thought about going to the police again, but I knew it was pointless. They'd already shown me whose side they were on. I thought about calling my parents, but I couldn't risk dragging them into this. I was alone, and I had to figure this out on my own. I drove into town, looking for a place to hide, a place to think. I found a library, old and crumbling, the kind of place that smelled like dust and forgotten secrets. I parked around the back and slipped inside, keeping my head down, avoiding the security cameras. The library was nearly empty, just a few old men reading newspapers and a librarian shelving books. I found a corner table, pulled out my laptop, and started searching. I looked up everything I could think of: missing persons, secret societies, government conspiracies, mind control experiments. Most of it was nonsense, wild theories and paranoid rants. But some of it felt too close to the truth to ignore. I found a forum, buried deep in the web, where people shared stories like mine, friends who'd vanished, strange messages, warnings not to trust anyone. Most of the posts were old, years old, but a few were recent. One caught my eye. "If you're reading this, you're already in danger. They're everywhere. Don't trust the police. Don't trust your friends. Don't trust yourself." I sent a message to the user, asking for help, for answers. I didn't expect a reply, but a few minutes later, my screen flashed with a new message. "Meet me at the old train station. Midnight. Come alone." I hesitated. It could be a trap. It probably was a trap, but I didn't have any other options. I needed answers, and this was the only lead I had. I spent the rest of the day in the library, watching the clock, my nerves stretched tight. I tried to read, tried to distract myself, but my mind kept drifting back to Tyler, to Emily, to the man in the suit. I wondered if I'd ever see them again, if I'd ever be free of this nightmare. As midnight approached, I drove to the train station, an abandoned building on the edge of town. The parking lot was empty, the windows boarded up, the only light a flickering street lamp. I parked a block away and walked the rest of the way, my heart pounding in my chest. Inside, the station was dark and cold, the air thick with the smell of mold and rust. I crept through the shadows, my footsteps echoing on the cracked tile floor. I found a bench in the corner and sat down, trying to steady my breathing. A few minutes later, a figure stepped out of the shadows. It was a woman, maybe in her 30s, her hair pulled back, her eyes sharp and wary. She glanced around, making sure we were alone, then sat down beside me. "You're the one from the forum?" she asked, her voice low. I nodded. "I need help. I need to know what's happening." She studied me for a moment, then nodded. "You're not the first. You won't be the last. They've been doing this for years, decades, maybe longer. Taking people, erasing them, making it look like they never existed." "Who are they?" I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. She shook her head. "No one knows for sure. Some say it's the government. Some say it's something older, something that's always been here. They have eyes everywhere. Police, teachers, neighbors. Anyone could be one of them. That's how they stay hidden." "Why me? Why Tyler? Why Emily?" She looked at me, her eyes sad. "You got too close. You saw something you weren't supposed to see. Maybe you asked the wrong questions. Maybe you trusted the wrong person. It doesn't matter. Once you're on their radar, they don't let go." I felt a chill run down my spine. "Is there any way out?" She hesitated. "Maybe, but it won't be easy. You have to disappear, really disappear. No phones, no credit cards, no contact with anyone you know. You have to become a ghost." I shook my head. "I can't just run. I need answers. I need to know what happened to my friends." She sighed. "Most people who go looking for answers don't come back. But if you're determined, there's one place you can try. There's a facility, hidden in the woods outside town. They call it the Black House. That's where they take people, where they do whatever it is they do. If you can get inside, maybe you'll find what you're looking for." She handed me a slip of paper with an address and a warning. "Be careful. If they catch you, you'll wish you'd never started looking." She stood up and melted back into the shadows. Leaving me alone in the dark, I sat there for a long time, turning the slip of paper over in my hands. I knew it was a risk, maybe the biggest risk I'd ever taken. But I couldn't stop now. I had to know the truth. That I drove out of town, following the directions on the paper. The road wound through dense woods, the trees pressing in on either side. The moon was high, casting long shadows across the pavement. I kept glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see headlights. But the road behind me was empty. After an hour, I found the turnoff, a narrow dirt road, barely wide enough for my car. I followed it for miles, the trees growing thicker, the darkness deeper. Finally, I saw it, a house, black as pitch, barely visible against the night sky. I parked a safe distance away and approached on foot, moving as quietly as I could. The house was surrounded by a high fence, topped with barbed wire. Security cameras watched every angle, their red lights blinking in the dark. I circled the perimeter, looking for a way in. I found a gap in the fence, just wide enough to squeeze through. I crept across the yard, keeping to the shadows, my heart pounding in my chest. Inside, the house was silent. I slipped through a side door, careful not to make a sound. The halls were dark, the only light the faint glow of emergency exit signs. I moved quickly, searching for anything that might lead me to Tyler, to Emily, to the truth. I found a staircase leading down to the basement. The air grew colder as I descended, the walls closing in around me. At the bottom, I found a row of doors, each one locked tight. I listened at each one, straining to hear any sound, any sign of life. At the end of the hall, I found a door that was slightly ajar. I pushed it open and stepped inside. The room was small, bare except for a single chair and a camera mounted on the wall. In the chair sat a man, his head bowed, his hands tied behind his back. I stepped closer, my breath catching in my throat. It was Tyler. He looked up as I entered, his eyes wide with fear and relief. "You found me," he whispered. That I rushed to untie him, my hands shaking. "We have to get out of here," I said. He nodded, struggling to his feet. "They're coming. We have to hurry." We made our way back up the stairs, moving as quickly and quietly as we could. We slipped out the side door and ran for the fence, ducking through the gap. As we reached the car, I heard shouts behind us, the sound of footsteps pounding across the yard. I fumbled with the keys, my hands shaking, and finally got the door open. We jumped in and I floored the gas, the tires spinning in the dirt that we sped down the road, the house disappearing behind us. I kept glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see headlights. But the road behind us was empty. We didn't speak for a long time. The only sound, the roar of the engine and the pounding of our hearts. Finally, Tyler broke the silence. "Thank you," he said, his voice barely more than a whisper. I nodded, my eyes on the road. "What happened to you? Where's Emily?" He shook his head. "I don't know. They kept me in that room, asked me questions over and over. About you, about Emily, about the videos. I told them I didn't know anything, but they didn't believe me." I glanced at him, my heart aching. "We'll find her. We'll find answers." He nodded, but I could see the fear in his eyes, the weight of everything he'd been through. We drove through the night, not stopping until the sun came up. We found a motel on the edge of another town, paid in cash, and locked the door behind us. We sat on the bed, staring at the wall, too exhausted to speak. That I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know if we'd ever be safe, if we'd ever find Emily, if we'd ever get answers. But for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel alone. We slept in shifts, the way people do in war zones or after disasters, never fully trusting the silence, never letting our guard down. Tyler would doze off, his head against the wall, while I sat by the window, watching the parking lot for any sign of movement. Then we'd switch, and I'd try to rest, but my mind wouldn't let me. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the black house, the endless hallways, the locked doors. I saw Emily's face, pale and frightened, calling out for help in a voice I couldn't reach. Tyler barely spoke. He'd flinch at sudden noises, stare at the TV without seeing it, and sometimes he'd mutter things under his breath, fragments of conversations, numbers, names. I wrote everything down, hoping some detail would make sense, would give us a clue. But it was all a jumble, a puzzle with half the pieces missing. On the third day, I woke to find Tyler gone. Panic shot through me like ice water. I tore through the room, checked the bathroom, the parking lot, the lobby. Nothing. I was about to call the police. Then I remembered, don't trust them. I forced myself to think. Tyler wouldn't just leave. Not after everything. I checked the nightstand. There was a note, scrawled in his shaky handwriting. Had to go. Don't follow. I'll find you. I sat on the bed, the note trembling in my hands. I wanted to scream, to punch the wall, to do anything but sit there and wait. But I knew I had to be smart. I had to trust Tyler, trust that he had a reason. Maybe he'd remembered something. Maybe he was trying to protect me. I spent the day pacing the room, checking my phone every few minutes, jumping at every sound. I tried to distract myself by going over the clues again, the videos, the texts, the warnings. I mapped out everything I knew, drew lines between people and places, tried to see the pattern. But it was like trying to read a book in a language I didn't understand. That night, I got a text from an unknown number. It was a photo, Tyler, sitting in a diner, looking straight at the camera. He looked tired, but alive. The message said, he's safe. For now. I stared at the photo, my mind racing. Was it a threat? A warning? Or was someone trying to help? I tried to call the number, but it was disconnected. I tried to trace the photo, but it was scrubbed of all metadata. Whoever sent it knew what they were doing. I didn't sleep that night. I sat by the window, watching the parking lot, waiting for Tyler to come back, for another message, for anything. But the night passed in silence. The next morning, I decided I couldn't wait any longer. I packed my things, paid for another night in cash, and left the motel. I drove to the diner from the photo, a greasy spoon on the edge of town. I parked across the street and watched for hours, but there was no sign of Tyler, no sign of anyone watching me. I went inside, ordered coffee, and showed the waitress the photo. She shook her head. "Never seen him," she said, but her eyes flicked to the back booth, just for a second. I thanked her and left a big tip. I sat in my car, watching the diner, trying to decide what to do next. That's when I saw him, a man in a gray hoodie, sitting in the back booth, watching me through the window. He raised his coffee cup in a silent toast, then stood up and walked out the back door. I followed, my heart pounding. I rounded the corner and found him waiting in the alley. "You're looking for Tyler," he said. His voice was low, calm, almost friendly. I nodded, trying to keep my voice steady. "Do you know where he is?" He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "He's safe. For now. But you need to stop looking. You're making things worse." I clenched my fists. "I can't just stop. I need answers. I need to find Emily." He sighed, as if I were a stubborn child. "You don't understand. The more you dig, the more attention you draw. They're watching you. They're watching everyone." "Who are they?" I demanded. "What do they want?" He shook his head. "It doesn't matter. You can't fight them. You can't even see them. The best thing you can do is disappear. Forget about Tyler. Forget about Emily. Start over." I stared at him, anger and fear warring inside me. "I can't do that." He shrugged. "Suit yourself. But don't say I didn't warn you." He turned and walked away, melting into the shadows. I stood there for a long time, the words echoing in my head. I knew he was right, in a way. The more I searched, the more dangerous it became. But I couldn't stop. Not now. I drove back to the motel, my mind racing. I tried to call Tyler, but his phone was off. I tried to call Emily, but her number was disconnected. I felt more alone than ever. That night, I got another text. This one was a video, grainy, shaky, filmed in a dark room. Tyler was there, tied to a chair, his face bruised and bloody. A voice off camera asked him questions, the same questions as before. "Who have you told? What do you know? Who else is involved?" Tyler shook his head, blood dripping from his nose. "I don't know anything," he whispered. The camera zoomed in on his face. "Tell us about the texts," the voice demanded. Tyler looked straight into the lens, his eyes wild. "Don't trust them," he said. "Don't trust anyone." The video cut off. I sat there, shaking, the phone slipping from my hand. I wanted to scream, to break something, to do anything but sit there and watch my friend suffer. But I knew I had to keep going. I had to find him. I had to find Emily. I spent the next few days searching, following every lead, every clue. I went back to the warehouse, to the black house, to every place I could think of, but it was like chasing ghosts. Every time I got close, the trail went cold. I started to see the man in the suit again, always just out of reach, always watching. I started to get more texts, more warnings. "You're getting too close. Stop now. This is your last chance." I ignored them. I couldn't stop. Not now. One night, I got a call from a blocked number. I answered, my heart pounding. It was Emily. Her voice was weak, barely more than a whisper. "Help me," she said. "Please." "Where are you?" I asked, my voice shaking. "I don't know. It's dark. I'm scared." I tried to keep her talking, tried to get her to describe where she was, but the call cut off. I sat there, staring at the phone, my mind racing. I knew I had to find her. I knew I had to try. I went back to the forum, posted a message asking for help. Within minutes, I got a reply. "Check the old hospital. 3rd floor, room 317. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed my keys and drove across town, my hands shaking on the wheel. The hospital was abandoned. The windows boarded up, the doors chained shut. I found a way in through a broken window in the basement. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the smell of decay. I made my way up the stairs, my footsteps echoing in the empty halls. I found room 317 at the end of a long corridor, the door hanging off its hinges. Inside, the room was empty, except for a single chair, a camera mounted on the wall, and a note taped to the window. The note was written in Emily's handwriting. "I'm sorry." I tried. I sank to the floor, the note trembling in my hands. I wanted to scream, to cry, to do anything but sit there and accept that I'd failed. But I knew I couldn't give up. Not now. I searched the room, looking for any clue, any sign of where she might have gone. I found a flash drive taped to the underside of the chair. I took it back to my car and plugged it into my laptop. The drive was encrypted, but I remembered Emily's password. I typed it in, and the files opened. There were dozens of videos, all time-stamped, all filmed in the same dark room. The first few showed Emily, her face bruised, her eyes wild. She spoke in whispers, begging for help, pleading for someone to find her. The later videos were different. They showed other people I recognized. My friends, my teachers, even some of the police officers. They all sat in the same chair, all asked the same questions. Who have you told? What do you know? Who else is involved? Some of them cried, some screamed, some just stared blankly at the camera. But they all ended the same way, with a shadowy figure stepping into the frame, the screen going black. I sat in the car, the weight of what I'd seen pressing down on me. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't just run anymore. I made copies of the videos and hid them in different places. My car, my motel room, even buried one in the woods behind the hospital. I wrote letters, explaining everything, and mailed them to people I trusted, my parents, my friends, even a few journalists. I waited, hoping someone would believe me, hoping someone would help, but nothing happened. The letters disappeared, the videos were erased, the people I trusted stopped answering my calls. It was like the world was closing in on me. One door at a time. I started to unravel. I barely slept, barely ate. I spent hours staring at the wall, my eyes hollow. I said I could hear Emily's voice, whispering to me in the dark. I said she was trying to tell me something, but I couldn't understand. I tried to keep myself grounded, but I was struggling. I was having nightmares, waking up in the middle of the night, convinced someone was in the room with me. I started to see the man from the diner everywhere, in the grocery store, at the gas station, even outside my motel. One night, I woke up to find someone standing at the foot of my bed. It was the man in the suit, his eyes cold and empty. "You can't run forever," he said. I tried to move, tried to scream, but I couldn't. I was frozen, paralyzed. He leaned in close, his breath cold on my face. "We know what you've done. We know what you've seen. You can't hide from us." He straightened up, his face expressionless. "You have a choice. You can keep running, keep hiding, or you can come with us. We can give you answers. We can make it all go away." I tried to speak, but my mouth wouldn't work. He smiled, a cold, empty smile. "Think about it." He turned and walked out of the room, the door closing softly behind him. I lay there, shaking, unable to move, unable to breathe. When I finally managed to get up, the room was empty. The door was locked, the windows closed. There was no sign anyone had been there. I packed my things and left, not caring where I was going, just needing to get away. I drove through the night, the world outside my windshield a blur of headlights and shadows. I didn't know where I was going anymore. I just needed to keep moving, to stay ahead of whatever was hunting me. The roads grew emptier, the town smaller, until I found myself on a lonely stretch of highway with nothing but the hum of the engine and the pounding of my heart for company. I stopped at a rest area just before dawn, the sky a bruised purple on the horizon. I sat in the car, staring at my reflection in the rearview mirror. I barely recognized myself, hollow eyes, stubble on my chin, a haunted look that hadn't been there before all this started. I wondered if I'd ever be the same again, if I'd ever be able to go back to the person I was before Tyler's final text. My phone buzzed. I jumped, my nerves frayed. The screen was blank, just a single message. It's time. I stared at the words, my mind racing. Was it a threat? A warning? Or something else? I waited, but no other messages came. The silence pressed in around me, thick and suffocating. I got out of the car and walked to the edge of the parking lot, the cold air biting at my skin. I looked up at the sky, searching for answers, for some sign that this nightmare would end. But the only thing I saw was the first pale light of morning, washing the world in gray. I thought about everything that had happened: Tyler's disappearance, Emily's cries for help, the videos, the warnings, the man in the suit. I thought about all the people who had vanished, all the questions that had never been answered. I wondered if I would ever know the truth, or if I would just become another name on a list, another story whispered in the dark. I went back to the car and started driving again, the road stretching out in front of me like a lifeline. I didn't have a plan anymore. I just knew I couldn't stop. Not yet as the sun rose. I found myself in a new town, the streets empty, the houses silent. I parked the car and walked through the quiet neighborhoods, my footsteps echoing on the pavement. I felt invisible, a ghost drifting through a world that no longer made sense. I found a payphone on the corner, the kind you never see anymore. I picked up the receiver and dialed my parents' number, my hands shaking. It rang and rang, but no one answered. I left a message, my voice barely more than a whisper. "I'm sorry. I love you. Don't look for me." I hung up and walked away, the weight of everything pressing down on me. I knew I couldn't go home. I couldn't risk dragging anyone else into this. I was on my own. I checked into a motel on the edge of town, paid in cash, used a fake name. I locked the door behind me and sat on the bed, staring at the wall. I tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw Tyler's face, Emily's eyes, the man in the suit. I heard their voices, their warnings, their pleas for help. I woke up to another text, this one from a new number. "You're not alone." I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. Was it a threat? A promise? Or something else? I didn't know anymore. I just knew I couldn't give up. Not now. I spent the next few days moving from place to place, never staying anywhere for long. I kept my head down, avoided cameras, paid in cash. I watched the people around me, looking for signs, for patterns, for anything that might help me understand what was happening. One night, I found another note slipped under my door. It was written in Tyler's handwriting. "Meet me at the old bridge. Midnight. Come alone." I didn't hesitate. I drove to the bridge, the world silent and still. I parked the car and walked out onto the span, the river below black and endless. I waited, my breath fogging in the cold air. After what felt like hours, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned and saw Tyler, standing at the edge of the bridge, his face pale in the moonlight. "You made it," he said, his voice barely more than a whisper. I nodded, tears stinging my eyes. "I thought you were gone." He shook his head. "I can't leave. Not yet. There's something you need to know." He stepped closer, his eyes searching mine. "They're not just watching. They're controlling. They decide who stays, who goes, who remembers. They erase people, erase memories, erase the truth. That's why no one believes us. That's why no one helps." I swallowed hard, the truth settling over me like a shroud. "What do we do?" He looked out over the river, his shoulders slumping. "We keep moving. We keep fighting. We don't let them win." He turned back to me, his eyes fierce. "Promise me you won't give up. Promise me you'll keep looking for answers." I nodded, my voice breaking. "I promise." He smiled, a sad, tired smile. "Good. That's all we have left." He turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows. I stood on the bridge, the wind whipping around me, the world silent and still. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know if I'd ever see Tyler or Emily again, if I'd ever find the answers I was looking for, but I knew I couldn't stop. Not now. Not ever. I walked back to my car, the first light of dawn breaking over the horizon. I started the engine and drove into the new day, the road stretching out in front of me, endless and unknown. And somewhere, deep down, I knew I wasn't alone.